an honor, in fact, to welcome you to the University of Warsaw, to this beautiful lecture room in Dobra 55, our recent acquisition. Well, not quite recent, but 2 years old. This is the Center of Humanities. This is the Center of Social Sciences at the University of Warsaw. And it's my great privilege to welcome you to the conference, which touches upon very important, very timely topics. Very well, the topic, the subject which moves the social circles for the last 2 or 3 years and leaves an imprint and lasting impact, I believe, on the culture, university culture, academic culture, but in general, the societal culture, because those are the artificial intelligence tools, are the tools which spread beyond the academia, which are used widely in everyday life by our colleagues, by our friends, by the citizens of this country and European citizens. And it is important to understand the limits. It is important to understand the capabilities of those tools. Not every one of us needs to be a creator of the large language models, but I believe that sooner or later every one of us will become an user of those breakthrough new tools. This is the revolution. This is the revolution which is familiar from the old days, from the 90s, when the use of personal computers became widespread, when internet connections appeared, when sharing of ideas, sharing of information over the internet became popular and common. So we are facing similar time. This is, in a sense, also a disruption of the pre-existing order, also in the academia world. And we have to cope with that. We have to understand, we have to manage, we have to participate in a responsible manner. Well, it is predicted by the World Economy Forum that over the next 5 years, about 170 million of professional roles will be created, while above 90 million of professional roles should disappear. Those which shall disappear will disappear mostly due to the widespread use of artificial intelligence. Probably most will disappear due to the widespread use of those tools to solve rather trivial tasks and to help us in performing rather trivial processes in our daily life. However, this is going to be a revolution, and this is going to be a big chance. The University of Warsaw willingly participates in this revolution. We are trying to make all the recent tools available to our students and to our colleagues, to the faculty. Last Wednesday, we made it possible to use the most recent version of the Gemini engine by everyone belonging to the university community. I mean, students, PhD students, doctoral candidates, and teachers, academic teachers and researchers, of course. And we think that this is the way to progress, to make those tools available, to make people compete not at the level of the access to those tools, but at the level of making the best possible breakthrough, innovative use of them. And of course, this use has to be regulated, and this is a great task, a great challenge for social sciences, for law, for business regulations. And I believe this conference and the meeting today and tomorrow shall help to create new rules, shall help to understand better the situation and to, well, to shape the future of the field for the years to come. I am very happy to have you here on the premises of the University of Warsaw. Well, I wish you a fruitful event. It's great to be here to declare this conference open. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and I think great honor for me to be here at this conference, the regulation of the markets in defense of the democratic principles. Because I think market, government, and enterprise, this is the big institution in the world. And we tried to find some rules to cooperate this institution. So I think that today we have the great issue, great question. The key institution shaping democracy are not public, but the digital platforms. So I think that these platforms don't just operate only in the markets. They shape information, behavior, and public data. From an institutional perspective, this matters because institutions are about rules and about power. So I think that the power of this institution increasingly concentrate in digital ecosystem. So this situation create, I think, the tensions, fundamental tensions. Private actors are performing rules that were once public. So we know new regulation, such as the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Service Acts, because I think that we can find the solution how to create the better world, create the better society. These rules, it's very, in my opinion, important. So I think we can try to protect democracy. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, I'm really touched because I welcome you today at a conference that cherishes the legacy of Professor Irena Wiśniewska-Białecka. And I speak today as a representative of the institution. This is the Polish Academy of Science, where Professor Irena Wiśniewska spent most of her academic years. But also I speak as a, as a follower of her academic interests, because I'm an IP lawyer, and I remember the times as a student I was learning IP based on her IP and research articles. This was the late 90s. So these times not many people understood IP, and especially not many people understood also competition law, and Professor Irena Wiśniewska was a star amongst the people who were doing this in Poland. And it were times also of reduced mobility and access to resources. So today there are many more of us who are pursuing the goals and the values of Professor Irena Wiśniewska. And I think there is a continuity with what Professor Wiśniewska did and remained faithful throughout her whole career. I speak also from as a professional lawyer, as an academic, and also as a judge. And it is my heartfelt wish that today you will see this continuity in the works of the researcher we are going to celebrate, and also in these significant societal goals we are discussing. and the topics that will be tomorrow challenged and engaged by the academic fellows. So I know that introductions are very boring, so let me wish you a heart welcome in Poland and a nice day in Warsaw, and please enjoy the conference.
Well, it's always a dilemma to how to select a room for the conference, because I don't know, have you ever seen the film by Bob Fosse, All That Jazz? And there the stand-upper says we employ small waitress because then the drinks, they seems to be bigger. Now, it took us a while, I would say, to decide upon which room out of university available rooms we shall choose, and it took us to take this one, and that was a good decision. And I hope that, I would say, the audience will somehow fill it up tomorrow. Now, it is in fact a honor and privilege to share the opening of this conference together with the representatives of the University of Warsaw. This conference is accompanied by the awarding of prizes funded by the Foundation for publication in the fields of competition law and intellectual property law. The Foundation was established by our late personal and professional friend, as well as distinguished figure in the Polish and European legal community, Professor Irena Wiśniewska-Białecka. Like many of us gathered here today, she belonged to the post-World War II generation that served as a bridge between the 19th and the 21st centuries. Generation torn away from Western culture by Soviet domination, kidnapped by Soviets, as Milan Kundera would put it. It was a generation raised by parents and grandparents, shaped by the experience of the First World War, October Revolution, and the Second World War, the true nomads of the Bloodlands. Yet, it was also a generation that refused to let its mind be held captive by authoritarian regimes. A generation for whom EU membership was not something granted, but something deeply deserved. A generation for whom the moment of accession to European Union was probably the most significant moment in their professional and personal lives. Irena Wiśniewska was a distinguished representative of this generation and a compelling spokesperson, and as a judge, guardian of the values essential to the functioning of the civil society. Legal systems exist to protect human dignity and the values deriving from it against violation and abuse. Together, they form the foundation of European identity based on rights, the rule of law, and multilateralism. This is how an integrated Europe has developed and how it presents itself to the world. No system is perfect. However, inconsistency does not mean that European society can afford to abandon European integration. Deficiencies call for improvement, not destruction. And this is the task for all of us, both as individuals and institutions. And this is also the rationale behind the creation and the work of the Foundation, which seeks to make its modest contribution to the protection of our Europe. We support young professionals of goodwill and good faith for the sake of cultivating the culture of civil society, conscious of rights and obligations. To end up, I would say, this introductory note, I would like only to express my gratitude to many of us here who made this conference possible. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Maciej Bernat from Warsaw University and Lavinia Brancusi, whom you have just heard speaking. We would like also to thank the jury members who in fact selected the works of our authors, who in fact will be receiving soon the prizes. We thank you, we express our gratitude to Marek Safian, Professor of Law and the former judge of the Court of Justice of European Union. Annette Kur, Emeritus Professor of the Max Planck Institute, Munich. Maciej Bernat and Lavinia Brancusi, whom you have already talked about. Tomasz Kuncewicz, Professor at the University of Gdańsk. Grzegorz Materna, Professor at the University of Law Studies of the Polish Academy of Science. Alison Jones, Professor of Law at King's College London. And David Llewellyn, Professor of IP Law at King's College London. I would like also to thank all of the speakers and panelists who came from abroad, devoting their time to us throughout these 2 days, despite of the hectic life and commitments in their professional life. Thank you very much to former Commissioner and Vice President of European Commission, Mrs. Vera Jourova. Thank you very much to Ilene Knabel-Gotz, who came to join us from New York. Thank you very much to Eleanor Sharpstone, Professor Eleanor Sharpstone, Dame Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George. Thank you to Michał Boni. All these people, they do care about what our future will be in the times where the circumstances, they astonish us every morning when we open newspapers with the news. I do hope that our 2 days will somehow get us to understand what it is that is really important in human life and why we have all these legal systems and what it is that they are protecting. Thank you very much. And thank you very much also to all the staff which made organization of this conference possible. Thank you very much to Aleksandra Włodarczyk. Thank you very much to Marzena Białasik, Antoni Bolecki, Elżbieta Kasprzycka, Justyna Zandberg, and many who are making our functioning here throughout the conference easy and possible. Thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy the conference.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. We're only 12.5 minutes over schedule already, so I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible with the introduction. The point that I'm going to make, if I make one single point about the theme of this conference, it is that it is not possible to talk about issues regarding regulating markets, economic power, AI, without also considering the effect that these things have on our communities and on our system of democracy. And as Tomasz just explained, one of the main motivations behind organizing this conference was to honor and respect the legacy of Irena Wiśniewska-Białecka. So I'm going to start with a simple reflection. if this conference had taken place 20 years ago, when Irena Wiśniewska was a judge at the General Court of the European Union, the topics that we'd be talking about would probably be competition policy, economic policy, and something to do with the evolution of the internal market. The same questions mean something very different today, because when we talk about competition policy, we're also talking about AI, we're talking about algorithmic power, we're talking about tech domination, and we're talking about the resilience of our democracy itself. That shift from markets by themselves to markets and democracy is exactly what we're going to be talking about today and tomorrow. And when we first started talking about and considering the theme for this conference in the middle of last year, we wanted to do something that was ambitious and made a real, genuine contribution to these debates. And if we think about 25 years ago, when Judge Wiśniewska was a judge at the Supreme Administrative Court in Poland, and then at the General Court when Poland joined the European Union, the world that we lived in then was a very different one from the one that we have today. So the internet was very young. The idea that social media would influence political discourse didn't exist. And the idea that global technology companies could act as gatekeepers for information and markets was something which was only starting to be considered. And it's today when we talk about these things, we're talking about AI, but we're also talking about democratic resilience. We're talking about the influence of technology on democratic life. And it's impossible to talk about AI without also asking a few very, very basic questions. Who builds it? Who owns it? Who controls it? And how does it already affect our everyday life? And these are precisely the questions that are going to be addressed in today's keynote speech, which is titled Democracy and Technology, Love or Hate, Crash or Synergy? Can democracy as we know it survive digital platforms and AI? After that keynote speech, we're going to continue that discussion with two distinguished commentators. And then we're going to have an award ceremony, which is both for the inaugural Irena Wiśniewska-Białecka Prize, as well as the Warydyński and Partners Prize for Best Master's Thesis in IP and Competition Law. But first, allow me to introduce our discussants. Michał Boni is a political scientist who's been active in political life for several decades. He has been an elected member of both the Polish Parliament and the European Parliament, and he was the first Minister for Digital Affairs in Central and Eastern Europe. Our second discussant, Eleanor Sharpston, is a celebrated barrister and current vice chair of the Aarhus Convention Compliance Committee. And she's perhaps best known to all of us as the last, hopefully not the last ever, Advocate General appointed by the United Kingdom to the Court of Justice. And over her many years as an Advocate General on the court, she's delivered hundreds of opinions that span all aspects of EU law, but in particular, notably, constitutional law, fundamental rights, and equality. Before that discussion, we have the privilege of hearing from our keynote speaker. Vera Jourova is currently the Vice Rector for Human Resources and New Technologies at Charles University in Prague. From 2014, she was the European Commissioner for Justice, Consumer and Gender Equality. And between 2019 and 2024, she was the Vice President of the Commission responsible for values and transparency. I have 3 more sentences. You might want to sit down. Because I wanted to mention all of the amazing initiatives that you've been involved in. So to cut the time down, if we're thinking about all of the things that Vera Jourova has contributed to European life and European law, she was hugely influential in her time at the Commission for the adoption of the AI Act for the digital the Media Freedom Act, the Digital Services Act, the GDPR regulation, the rule of law conditionality mechanism. So the influence has been massive, and there's no one better to talk about these issues today than our keynote speaker. So could you all please join me in welcoming Vida Jourova to deliver her keynote speech.
Will you open the presentation?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to come to Poland. Not always. I had some difficult times here in the past, but today it's a special honor for me to have a chance to speak here on an event which is organized with the blessing of Judge Irena Wiśniewska and with the organization support of the University of Warsaw. You will sit at this information. I am not anymore the vice rector of the university.
Okay, my apologies.
Yeah.
Catch that on Google when I type.
You know, life is quick. Life is quick. No, my boss, Rector Kraličková, didn't manage to renew her mandate, so I had to go away with her. So it's life. My presentation will not improve the time delay. It's long, but I will try to skip things. So how do I operate it?
Maybe shall I sit there and I'll work it for you?
Please do, please do. You mentioned the list of the European legislative pieces which are now so hated in Washington, because the European regulation makes the business of American platforms more demanding and more expensive in Europe, because we simply want them to assume the responsibility for the content and for privacy of the users. And I am very close to become the member of on the sanctions list of the United States because of this. But I am lucky because I am already on the Russian sanctions list. So maybe it would be difficult for Washington to explain why, for the same thing, I appear on both lists. My presentation is focusing on the influence of digital technologies and AI, especially AI on democracy. And I know that your conference is very much focused on the things related to the market and economy, but maybe you will agree with me that without functioning democracy, we will not be able to develop flourishing economy in our member states. I want to speak about the influence of internet in general, digital platforms, which were mentioned here, digital search engines, and AI. And in my theory, especially the digital platforms, managed to create a parallel world for Europeans. And the people moved to this world without taking their rights with them and rules. And what we are witnessing, and we are affected by that, we now live in the society which is so much influenced by the systems where their owners, mainly the American digital business corporations, think that they can simply do in Europe without any rules. And it was the idea they had till 2015 when we adopted the GDPR. It was the first moment for Facebook and others to realize that in Europe we want them to operate differently from how they operate in the rest of the world. And I sometimes use the very maybe difficult to swallow metaphor that it is a revenge for what Hernán Cortés did when he colonized America, bringing their diseases, which the society was not able to face without having immunity. And we in Europe, I think, feel the same thing, that we were not fully immune to all those things which were brought here through the digital platforms. Take, for instance, the privacy. Compared with the Americans, we are much more sensitive about being protected, having our identity and privacy protected. And the digital platforms did not respect it at all. That's why we have GDPR. And I will continue because of the time pressure. Back, not so quickly. Sorry. Many things are heavily affected by the business operations of the digital platforms. And I would like to just mention one thing, create tribes. I remember when I met Mark Zuckerberg in my office in Brussels, and I told him, Mr. Zuckerberg, you created again the tribes. For centuries, the human beings tried to get rid of tribal arrangement because tribes are fighting against each other, and suddenly through Facebook we have tribes again, meaning the bubbles which were created by the algorithms. And he didn't understand at all what I speak about. And it was a big misunderstanding. So there were a lot of things to explain to the American bosses about how we want it in Europe and what we do not want. Maybe let's continue. This is the creator of internet, Mr. Sir Tim Berners-Lee. I met him in Summit in 2018. He was not celebrating at all. He said that he's so disappointed because he wanted to create a system for education, for people to meet with others, and for education, for better understanding. And now he sees that the reality is totally different. Later on AI, he said, if you make AI smarter than yourself, that's an issue. And I think that we are approaching this period, and I will speak a while after about what we try to do against having the AI commanding us, guaranteeing that we will always want to command and order AI what to do and not vice versa. Let's continue. Action causes reaction. Yes, let's go on. European Union is sometimes called the queen of regulation, but it's not the only thing in Europe what we are doing to introduce regulation which tries to maybe somehow regulate the speed of the technologies on European highways. But in Europe, we also try and want to invest a lot of public money in digital infrastructure, public money which should be combined with private money to create own digital future of Europe. Invest in education, attract global talent, and reduce the digital and innovation gap. I don't know whether you are following what's happening now in the Commission and in the EU institutions, but there is a very strong wave of activities which should result in something which is called digital sovereignty. You know that in Europe we had to start a lot of activities to get rid of very dangerous dependencies, to get rid of dependency on Russia when it comes to energy, on China when it comes to some technologies, India when it comes to medical medicines and so on. And we realized that our dependency on United States technologies, it's also a very dangerous situation which we should stop or somehow diminish the impact of such dependency. And so that's why we speak now about digital sovereignty, which will have a lot of features, not only investments, but also the new concept, which I am myself curious whether we will see it in practice, which is buy Europe, which is procurement, which will exclude other than European companies, for instance, which is building own European clouds, which is better handling and using the data. So we see a lot of it in Europe. Also, what we will see will be revision of some of the pieces of legislation which have my signature. So already this year there will be, probably we will see the proposal to revise the Digital Markets Act, which you will speak about, Digital Decade, CHIPS Act, oh God, what is it? Audio, don't worry, I cannot read it after myself. Audio Visual Directive and Copyright Directive. Copyright Directive will have to be revised, facing new threats coming from AI. Next year, there is a plan to do a proper, quite deep revision of cybersecurity legislation, Digital Services Act. In 2028, there should be a revision of the Media Freedom Act and AI Act and Data Act. So these are unusually speedy plans to revise rather fresh still legislation. And it shows that the technological development goes so fast that Europe has to speed up to catch up and to simplify things, because this should be also a simplification, especially for small and medium enterprises and for our innovation scene, but also to cover the new threats, emerging threats, which we were not aware of when we were creating this legislation. Let's go further. Yeah, that's me. Look, this is the slide I call sentimental one, because upstairs there is me with Brad Smith, who is the number 2 in Microsoft. This gentleman helped me to create the first ever globally ethics standards for AI. It was very, very useful cooperation. In the middle with Elon Musk, I met him personally twice, but I didn't want to shake hands with him. We had a special relationship. And down, this is with Mark Zuckerberg. Just notice the color of the jacket. The ladies will notice, maybe you have a similar tactics. When you need to look strong and aggressive, you wear red and orange, or even yellow. So look at that. But no jokes. This is the list of threats. And we are facing the new kinds of threats to the society and to individuals. So security risks, threats to privacy. I spoke about it, that we had to react already by means of GDPR on absolute disrespect to privacy of the users of the digital systems. Security risks, child sexual abuse, material hate speech, racism, extremism, and there is also somewhere, there was before in the presentation, radicalization. In fact, radicalization was the first impulse why we started to seriously speak about the regulation of the content, because the terrorist attacks committed by Islamists in the Western Europe were almost in all cases inspired online. And we realized that this is just the university of terrorism and radicalization, what especially the young men see online. So we had to start regulating. Hybrid warfare risks, cyber attacks, sabotages, subversive actions, and information operations, if you want, disinformation campaigns, which are either ad hoc and long-term. Especially Russia has a special strategy for all the member states. There are some narratives which cover the whole European Union, but there are very well-designed narratives which can influence the mindset of the society and also the voting preferences. So as for Poland, for a long time we didn't see much of it produced in Russia, covering Polish society. Before the European elections, we suddenly saw that the narrative of Ukrainians eating bread of Polish people was spread heavily, and it had the potential to influence the voters' preferences. Unfortunately, every time after elections, which we see from data that there was a high level of manipulation, we still are not able to define the percentage caused by the manipulation. Yeah, so I think that this is the call on the researchers to develop the methodology to be able to estimate the effect of the disinformation campaigns. Mental health, cognitive capacities, this is becoming very clear that we are facing this very dangerous path or risk for especially for the young generation. I declare we made 3 big mistakes in the legislation addressing these kinds of threats. First of all, we did not dare to regulate digital platforms as media. European legislation is regulating the platforms as advertising industry. Media complain, they have a lot of obligations stemming from the law. Platforms are out of that. Second, not sufficient protection of children. And third, which is controversial, I am aware of it, anonymity online. So we can discuss about that later. How much, by the way, how much time do I still have?
How much do you need?
7 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Oh, yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
12 minutes. 10 might be okay. Yeah, let's go on. Yes, democracy as we know it. This slide reminds us of a changed atmosphere in the society and too many very uneasy things to swallow for our citizens. In people living in multiple crises, asking themselves and their politicians whether they will have money to buy food or whether they will have energy to heat, to have a heating, well, these are questions we were not used to in the past decades, or majority of the citizens. And suddenly we are in a new situation which is marked by anxiety and uncertainty. In such situation, I am not surprised. The people want strong hands. The politicians who will come with the solutions for us, not with us, which is one feature of democracy, that politicians do politics and policy with the people. This is the call, do it for us, and do it quickly, because we want to see the solution tomorrow. And this is a very strong call, which results in a number of populist parties in the governments of European member states. Negative emotions amplified by social media and AI. I don't blame technologies and platforms for all misery we live in, but they amplify it. They are not creating all of them, but they are amplifying the problems. Yes, let's go on. If we want to keep democracy functioning, we have to realize 3 things. It's not a given principle forever. It's not the end of history, and democracy will have to be taken care of more strongly. The voters must trust the democratic system, and democracy has to be innovated. I have few comments on all three. We can go on. The first principle, yeah, let's skip this. It's a bit long, but I want to mention or stop with the first item. Yes, democratic elections, one key parameter of democratic system, but not the only one. For me, there are two principles on equal footing, and it's the democratic, free and fair elections and active citizens, well-informed, not manipulated citizens. And I think that you can read it by yourself. As for the elections, it's not anymore business as usual to organize elections, because more and more we see manipulation and hidden manipulation. I blame the Brits for not disclosing the data from Brexit campaign, because I am convinced that disinformation campaign in UK caused the result of the referendum and changed the history not only of British people but of Europe as such. But we don't know. We don't know still what happened in Romania at the presidential election. Commission has data from TikTok because they ordered TikTok to keep the data so that the Commission can look into the algorithm, what happened, what kind of manipulation was applied, which resulted in the annulment of the elections by the Romanian Supreme Court. The data is in Brussels and we don't know the result. I blame the Commission for that, because we would heavily, we would how to say, we would desperately need to know about the methods being used to manipulate the voters now before Hungarian elections. Because I have absolutely no doubt that all kinds of manipulation and manipulative techniques, including the deep fakes and AI usage, will be used in order to achieve proper result, which is the victory of Victor. It's so fine to be free, you know. As a commissioner, I had to be careful. Now I can say openly what I wish for. I don't want manipulation in any elections. In Germany, remember Elon Musk doing interview with Madame Weidel, the chair of the AfD, helping them to win elections. It's the principle of the freedom of speech which enables Mr. Musk to do such things, also in European Union. But what do we know about the algorithm of his network? Whether he ordered his algorithm to rank higher the messaging from AfD, we don't know, but the Commission has access to the data. So I think that we should know more about that. My former colleagues are telling me that it's too difficult to make conclusions from what they read in the algorithms. But for that reason, in the Digital Services Act, there is also an obligation for the platforms and for the operators to enable the researchers to look into the algorithms and read and make conclusions. This is not used, this is not enforced, and we have the legislation which enables that. I will not read all. There are few bullet points which refer to the rule of law, because here the winners tend to take it all, but let's skip this. Political campaigning, there is no doubt that without the social media, without the platforms, there is no win for any politician. I cancelled my Facebook account in 2016 and my Twitter account in 2024 after the conflict with Elon. And many people were telling me, you are a dead person for politics, forget it. You will never be elected anywhere. It's the price to pay. Yeah? And I think that this is not a choice anymore. Simply you have to do the online political campaign. Impact of influencers, which is increasing and which is diminishing the influence of the traditional political parties. This is the question for the politologists, what to do with this. Cyber attacks. Let's go on. Yes, this is the list of the legislation we adopted to minimize the risks. The interesting thing is the code of conduct of political parties, which they signed before the European elections. They promised to me not to use deep fakes and AI manipulation. Yes, it worked only partly. Let's go on. Yeah, people must want it, must trust in democracy. Yes, let's. I think I already spoke about that. Access to evidence-based truth is more and more difficult. Here comes the question of whether we still have a reliable source of information, because I said that next to the free and fair elections, the other big parameter of democracy is well-informed citizen, and that's why maybe let's go on. That's why I wanted to have guaranteed that in every member state we have well-functioning public service media. Active engagement, communication top-down, social media, opportunity, not just a threat. I was asked so many times why I'm lamenting and criticizing social media instead of inventing the ways how to use them better in political communication. Of course, it's the call on every democratic politician and every democratic party to think about the ways how to fly on technological achievements and on technologies and how to use the social media better. Public service media, I already mentioned that. In the European Media Freedom Act, there is a very strong article that in every member state there should be public service media with sufficient financing, predictable long-term financing, and with transparent procedures leading to the appointments of the management and boards of such media. And I am afraid in Czechia it will be the first testing ground now, because the government wants to change the way of financing of the public service media, of the Czech TV especially. There are some very good independent moderators leaving the TV. This is the Slovak pattern. And I am mentioning it here because Poland is so close to us. And for myself, this will be interesting to watch and to see whether the Media Freedom Act will be applied in my own country to help the public service media to survive the political pressure. Education, the last point. This is a very important part or item on the list of remedies. It is sometimes neglected or overseen because it has long-term impact. But I cover by education here also not only schools, especially secondary schools, but also the education provided to the older generation, using of the public libraries, all institutions which can help to inform the people refer to the real data, refer to the modern history, are welcome to do that. Yes. Yes, let's go on. Innovation. How to innovate democratic system, how to introduce evolutionary measures and not to destroy the system by some kind of a revolution. We have a lot of pressures against our current system. One of them is that it's set to be the end of history, that we cannot have any better system, which is in fact paralyzing idea for any innovation. We have aging voters, demographic line, which shows that more and more the older generation is deciding the future of the younger ones. We see a lot of war propaganda. And what is the remedy? Let's go on. We have to think about how to make democratic system more friendly, more sexy, better to understand for the citizens. For me, the best field for it is the local and regional level. The mayors can do much more than the ministers in this sense. Voting system, I think it's hanging in the air in many states whether to go to the age of 16 and whether to introduce as the alternative way of voting the a digital system. And we have to find new ways of warning against totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. I had several very strong moments in my life of a commissioner, and one of them was the meeting with Marian Turski in Auschwitz. He died last year, and he was so urgent. He kept repeating, "Don't be indifferent." He was explaining what happened in the Second World War to him and to many others, but he was speaking about the presence, and the survivors are leaving us, so we have to find a way how to explain the younger generation that, for instance, fascism is not gone forever. I also met Madeleine Albright, who wrote a book, Fascism, and she was really scared because she said to me, my students at Georgetown University in Washington are asking me, Madam Professor, why are you writing about fascism? It's gone, it's the past. And she said, I am shocked by the lack of awareness and the absolute certainty that these horrible things will never come back. And connected with the digital technologies, I sometimes try to imagine how things would look like if Goebbels would have had Facebook, or if Mengele could use AI to measure the faces, who will be allowed to live and who will have to go. And if somebody thinks that in the current era there are no Goebbelses and no Mengeles, he is very mistaken. So that's why this last point, we have to know the point on the knowledge of history, because I think that we must not neglect that. I'm sure you read through the text. Maybe skip this. Here she is. I had in my political career 3 people opening door for me everywhere in the world. And Madeleine Albright was one of them. I was referring to her very often as the Czech citizen who had to flee 2 totalitarian regimes. First fascism and then communism. She was a living historian and a living evidence that we should not underestimate these the development in that direction again. So the two others were Karl Schwarzenberg and Václav Havel, of course, who were opening door for me. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. I had some very clever comments here in my textbook, but I cannot read it without glasses, so I will spare you of it. I don't like them. That's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Would you like to take a seat here? And if I could invite Michał Boni, and we have 30 minutes for the discussion. Eleanor is going to speak for a few minutes, and then Michał will speak for a few minutes, or alternatively. And then we'll end with some questions from the audience.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you, Vera, for very inspiring presentation. I consider, because you know, I have prepared some words and comments, but now I want to comment what Commissioner Jourova presented in her excellent presentation. Point one, if the democracy can survive some aspects, it depends on principles and rules stopping and limiting the dissemination of the false, manipulative content, as it was expressed very strongly, also protecting voters against deprivation of genuine free decision-making act. The common awareness of the threats for democracy, education, media, AI literacy, the competences of navigating on the digital world with a special focus on the unbelievable increasing role of influencers in modern times. And the third, the social capital growth, key challenge. But in the extremely polarized societies, it is very difficult because there is no common space, common values, common affirmation of the essential objectives. As Polish debate on the SAFE project has shown. Point two, SAFE debate in Poland. The data analyzed in the network one day after the president's veto reveals complete affective polarization. Two camps of similar emotional strength, which do not engage in dialogue, but instead reinforce their own narratives in parallel. Triumph and anger reach comparable levels of saturation on opposing sides of the dispute. Nawrocki's veto is not the subject of substantive debate here, but has become an identity trigger, with the SAFE Act merely a pretext for confirming tribal affiliation. In practice, this translates into an emotional draw without a common factual basis, making this discussion resistant to any rational arguments. But let's come back to some ideas how to support and keep the democracy under these circumstances, how to avoid changing the society into tribal groups. Point three, essential dimensions. The fundamental question is, what does it mean currently, democratic opportunities? As Vera Jourova highlighted, the elections are not the only parameter of democracy. Let's describe the holistic understanding of the democracy using the conceptual framework around democracy, in which we have rule of law, participation, representation, and rights. Can we fruitfully adapt democracy to the opportunities brought by technologies? Can technology be at the service to democracy? How AI can support new forms of participation in democracy, in taking part in public consultations, in building the possible and very needed influence of all stakeholders on decision-making processes. The significance of empowerment is visible in presenting the opinions of minority groups during public debates. How AI can give the citizens new tools for check and balance monitoring, for example, judicial independence, with in-depth analysis of the rule of law, real functioning. So this kind of instrument can be useful and used by every people, not only by experts and lawyers. How can the new technologies may ensure better organization of the merit activities of civic groups, support the exchange of experiences and ideas, and develop the models of representation with support for local democracies and local identities? How can the new technologies can support the freedom of expression? On the one side, linked to the ensuring civil liberties for all and political equality in the purpose of keeping rights, which are for democratic principles of public space and life, not against them and people with different views on some problems. Point 4, democratic agency. The challenge of democracy, whether the modern model of liberal democracy brings to the citizens the opportunity of their empowerment, and if it can give the citizens the feeling of being active, useful, treated seriously by politicians and politics, at last if the democracy can be so-called agentic. In many countries, there is a dominant view that democratic agency should come from the powerful government. As Vera Jourova expressed, the do it with us model is currently totally replaced by the do it for us issue. But it should have the real background in various forms of participation of all stakeholders and citizens. This is the only way to avoid the helplessness in the society. Important factor for this, the transparency and multi-channeled communication, top-down from public institutions to the society, and bottom-up, making citizens be really heard by institutions. And the substantial question is, if the new generative AI achievements, agentic AI, useful in many functionalities ensuring effective management of the companies, can be used as an agentic AI to support efficient and effective impact of citizens on the democratic processes. How to use the generative AI, agentic AI in service to democracy. Technically, it is possible, but who should to make it? Point 5, democracy and knowledge. The democratic processes and the democracy per se means the opportunity to make the best choice in decisions important for the development and the society, which requires that citizens understand the order, the state of order clearly established by legislative rules, are able to use the critical thinking vis-à-vis the ocean of false information and breaking the principles of the information space, can have access to evidence-based truth, and in addition to various options to find the genuine solutions, can use the proper safeguards for the fully free choice and decision based on evidence and the significance of the common goods, not on false background, as disinformation is. Point 6. The world is under the pressure of false narratives. The modern politics, not only populistic politics and policies, but nearly every policies, are predominantly under the highly exploded emotions and narratives of war, vocabulary of war. In this kind of so-called totally or partial authoritarian regimes and models of governance, the words and sentences are completely weaponized. How to build the effective early warning system against totalitarian symptoms. Disinformation makes changes in mindsets, limits the free choice of views among society, really works due to the significance of algorithms of perception. Our perception is organized by algorithms very precisely. Algorithms of perception are built on the false manipulative information, conspiracy theories, social and political stereotypes, our susceptibilities on the emotional pressures and content. All those tools are leading to the societal polarization based on disinformation. But do not forget to recognize the ground for some susceptibilities. They are close to our cultural patterns, tradition, models of identities, heritage, how to manage this challenge. 7. And finally, polarization is undermining the democracy because it is destroyable for the social political dialogue. And dialogue is the fundamental for involving all kinds of social groups, stakeholders, to work together to find the common solution. Point 8, the tragic grand finale. The anti-democracy chain. Disinformation means polarization. Polarization means no dialogue. No dialogue means erosion of common trust. Erosion of common trust and the lack of dialogue means the deficit or the death of democracy. Point 9, action is necessary. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not going to be a dissection of Vera Jourova's very detailed and very thoughtful keynote speech. Rather, it's a series of reflections, and given the time, I shall try to keep them punchy. Let me begin, by way of introduction, by observing that how democracy and technology interact with each other is hardly a new issue. If we just go back to the Industrial Revolution, to Hargreaves' spinning jenny, the new device for producing multiple yarn instead of a single thread, and look at the impact that had, the massive sociological and demographic and democratic changes, what happens with production lines and the de-skilling of large sectors of the workforce, the changes in sociology, and therefore the changes in the approach to democracy. And we look from the old days of citizen involvement when everyone, well, maybe almost everyone, was on the same side and they were for the city-state, to the situation of factory fodder where the natural instinctive reaction, well, it's them and it's us. All of that's true. Some things in this world are not new. Having said that, I think one can say that the rise in digital platforms and AI does trigger some new and fundamental challenges. Let's begin with a few comments then about the technology, and then I'll move on to democracy. The technology, beginning with digital. Well, we all know there are oceans of information. We're drowning in the stuff. Having said there are oceans, the quality of the information, the depth of the information are rather different things. And we've all noticed that there are ever so many more and more effective levers for the influencers to pull. Looking back over history, I have to say I think that Hitler and Goebbels would have been really happy to have had access to tools like Truth Social. And we can perhaps be indebted to the President of the United States for showing us its true horrible potential. It's difficult for any of us, even if we pride ourselves on being thinkers, card-carrying intellectuals, to find the time and the distance as the latest information comes in on our feed on our mobile phone, to be critical about what we're seeing and reading. And the technical tools out there for manipulation, for fake news, have become so much more sophisticated. Photoshopping these days is so much more skillful than the old doctoring of a photo to make sure that those who were no longer in favor with the regime mysteriously disappeared from the family photo of the happy junta. And AI is perfectly capable of generating scenes that are a figment of its imagination, but that are nevertheless incredibly convincing. Ah yes, AI. An even bigger challenge. What is it? Is it an enemy? Is it a friend saving us valuable time in our researches? Is it a servant? Or are we on to the way of making it our master? Should we be investing in order not to get left behind the techno-giant companies, behind the US, behind China? Or should we also be investing in order to minimize the harm that AI indubitably is capable of doing if it gets out of control? There's one thing for sure, we can't ignore it. Now, we live in, as was nicely put by our keynote speaker, we live in a parallel world of online reality. And the extent of its impact on our daily lives is really hard to overstate. And that world is quintessentially a trans-border world. That statement is a statement of the blindingly obvious. I'm not going to insult you by elaborating on it. So let's move to democracy. And if we move to democracy, actually what we find on the democracy side of the equation is not unidimensional. I was listening with great attention to our keynote speaker when we were looking at the distortions that have happened in the democratic process, in elections. I was so happy you mentioned the Brexit vote. That saves me from going there, doesn't it? But let's look also at the values that we need to safeguard on the democratic side. We do believe as a society, don't we, in the protection of diversity. We believe in guaranteeing fundamental rights. We believe in privacy. We believe in human dignity. We believe in anti-harassment. We also believe, but please note where I've put it in the ranking, we also believe in protecting free speech. But that free speech is not an absolute right. It's free speech within appropriate limits. And I can do no better than to refer to the framework that Article 10 of the ECHR puts out there for us. There's free speech. But interventions with free speech are legitimate if they're prescribed by law. They are necessary in a democratic society to protect the rights and freedoms of others. So, if we're going to try to deal with this collision zone between technology and democracy, whom do we make responsible? I mean, do we just leave it to individual responsibility, to individual citizens to behave correctly? At the other end, the other extreme, is this a collective responsibility of society somehow to educate its citizens so that they are less susceptible to being misled by technology? Do we put the emphasis on the digital platform, on the gatekeeper, on the creator of the tool, thinking of AI? And do we say, well, it's your responsibility to make sure this is not misused? By the way, a small matter of practicality. Do we make X responsible because X ought to be responsible, or merely because we can make X responsible? And that was not meant to be a pun on what used to be Twitter. It was purely accidental. I happened to choose the letter X. Can't think how that happened. And how do we make them responsible? Do we lay down administrative rules? Naughty, naughty if you break them. Very, very bad. You shouldn't be breaking administrative rules now. Or is there some intersect with the criminal law and with the opprobrium that goes with breaking the criminal law? What kind of obligations do we lay down? Merely negative obligations, thou shalt not allow X or Y, or are there some positive obligations? In order that X or Y should not happen, you are required to take positive action. And as soon as you're talking about rules, the practical lawyer in me is going to say, that's grand. And what is the extent of the sanctions that you have in mind? And what about their enforceability? Now, there's a whole lot of questions. I have not given you any answers, not least because I truly do not have them in my back pocket to present to you. But I am sure that during the course of this conference, there's going to be some very thoughtful analysis of particular aspects, and perhaps some of the answers or the beginnings of some of the partial answers will emerge during the conference. And like you, I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for each other while I'm preparing the microphone? No. Does anybody have any questions for our keynote speaker and our discussants? Anything you would like to?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Claudia Meicher from the European University Institute. So thank you so much for your very thoughtful keynote and for the comments by other speakers. I have a question. So you mentioned in your speech the simplification, the Brussels simplification agenda that is currently underway. And obviously the reason behind this is kind of valid. We have a very complex landscape of digital regulations. We have a digital omnibus, but there's also concern that this simplification may mean negative impacts on individual rights that we have so strongly fought for, right? So there's an example of the GDPR that that there's a an attempt to narrow its scope, for example. And my question is, are you concerned?
No, how I read it, it's more how to say a series of technical changes, and I think that the purpose, especially in case of GDPR, is to lower the burdens on the small and medium enterprises and eliminate some unnecessarily detailed rules, which I was criticizing myself when I was dealing with GDPR, but there was a strong push on having quite demanding rules for everyone, for the big ones and small ones, because it was said that, Michal remembers that even a small company can do a big harm, yeah? And so, no, I'm not concerned, but of course it will require a thorough discussion.
Hi, Aris Lawiński, University of Warsaw, PhD candidate. I have many questions, but I don't want to limit the fundamental right to coffee break, so I will just focus on one. Ms. Jourova, in your speech, I guess we missed a very important word. It was China. It was the omission for purpose, or shall we? China.
Do you think China is something I can avoid? It was once there that we need to decrease the gap. Of course, China was studied by us heavily when we started to regulate, because when I spoke to Chinese ministers over time, they were telling me, and it was quite naive to tell me, how they love the development of technologies because it enables them to keep the society under proper control. And I explained that especially by GDPR, we go totally different direction. But we will never want to use technologies and develop technologies which they are compared to China. At the same time, when it comes to AI, I was very much in favor of inviting China to the big conference on AI security to Bletchley, to London. There was a question mark whether to invite China or not. And I said on behalf of the EU, of course, we have to have them at the table so that we understand how far they are willing to go. And now, especially, it's important to understand because more and more there are voices that AI should be used more and more for defense and war purposes. So we should cooperate with China. Definitely, we need to understand what they are doing, and but we will never use these technologies against our own citizens, as China does it.
If I can add something, I think it is important to understand how we in the European Union, working on the AI Act, have had some references to the Chinese experience with social scoring. It was one of the big reasons indicate this kind of activity, digital activity and AI activity, as a forbidden, yes, because of making harm to our rights as citizens and so on and so on. So it's negative experience can be transferred to the positive decision in completely different cultural pattern.
Peter Slowinski, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. I'm always surprised how surprised we are by technological developments, and now particularly when it comes to AI from a legal and policy perspective. Because 2022 we had the first draft of the AI Act, and then suddenly we had to go back to the drawing board because ChatGPT got published by incident at the time. But the foundational paper on transformer models, which are the basis of ChatGPT and other AI tools, was from 2017. So like 5 years back. And for me, the big question is, and I think Sylvie Delacroix from King's College mentioned this last year at the conference, actually as policymakers and also as lawyers, we should have like the draft for what will be coming in 5 years right now. But how can we, or how can you as policymakers, for example, benefit from what is going on in the multiple disciplines in the universities to know what is going to happen in 5 years? Because I only see us reacting and I don't see us proactively looking into what's coming in a foresight model.
It has always been the case, and maybe agree with me or not, you don't know still what I want to say, that in the history we always saw that the money and technology was quicker than the law. Yeah? And so you are right, we proposed the first version of AI Act in 2022, and then over time we saw that we are catching the tiger by the tail, and the tiger is out of the cage, and we have to address the new kinds of technologies which may have much bigger impact on everything we do, and this is the OpenAI and everything what followed. So it was a unique moment in the history of the European legislators that we were drafting the chapter on big foundation models together with the Parliament and with the member states. It never happened before. It was always the Commission proposing something, and then the people like Michal, but Michal was a reasonable one, but but the parliamentarians who wanted to have their hobby horses there, they jump on it and try to change things, and the member states, of course, having also their positions. In this case, we were drafting it together, and we had a big elephant in the room, or big question. Half of the member states were saying, we cannot cover that in the AI Act, those big models, because we still don't know what it is. How can you regulate something you don't know what it is? And the second half was saying, when we know what it is, it will be late. You can imagine the dilemma. And after we agreed on having the articles covering OpenAI, the ChatGPT and others, we were quarreling about the capacity of computing power. And that very night, when we were sitting on it, Google announced the Gemini technology, which increased the computing power even higher. So we had to react, or in fact we reacted on something which happened an hour ago. Yeah? So I don't want to say that the result of such work is always the best one, because you should not create or develop or design the legislation on the basis of fear or hystery. And I don't want to say we were hysterical, but we were very concerned that if we do not catch the new development in the technology, we will lose very, very valuable time, and we will not be able to address the risks. And as for coming back to China, yes, as Michal said, we wanted by the AI Act to give some limits for the AI, not to demolish our concept of fundamental rights. But at the same time, I heard some member states claiming big exemptions for usage of AI in the security and criminal justice field for the sake of national security. Because national security, it's a holy space of the member states. This is something which the EU cannot enter. Yeah, so it was a horrible battle and very basic discussion about what kind of technology we want and whether the Europeans can stand the usage of AI compared with China or Brazil, for instance. I heard an interview of the mayor of the capital city of Brazil, who was so happy that they can use AI to watch the space and to do the screening of the faces in real time, and to use the AI for every intrusive measure against own citizens. So this is what we don't want in Europe. But again, some member states, it was France, but also some others, where we see some emerging security threats. They wanted to have much more, a big exemption for the usage of AI, which in my view would breach the fundamental rights.
If I can add 2 points. Firstly, we need to remember that military area is out of the scope of AI Act. It was a decision, yes, and especially now, after 5 years earlier debates on AI Act, when we are looking at the new models, new forms of battles using AI, drones and so on and so on. So I think this is a new challenge for us. Also to discuss about some limits, yes, for military using and military purposes with using of AI. And the second issue is related to this decision which was done after the generative AI eroded very exploded all over the world, that we have decided to name this risk as a systemic risk in AI Act, and also to prepare some kind of soft law, which means code of conduct, which was signed by all partners in the beginning of August last year. Yes, and I think this is, when we are talking about new technologies, very often I think it will be useful when we don't know exactly in which direction the technology is going. It's better to have some rules via code of conduct, and after that to discuss about stronger legislation.
If I may add one or two sentences connected with my presentation, I don't understand why it's so uneasy to understand that AI must not be protected by the freedom of speech. Yeah, because it was invented by people for people. And suddenly you see the digital space, which is flooded by the disinformation produced and distributed by AI. And we live in a conviction that we have to protect this artificial, what's a better word for shit? No, this
Bollocks.
What?
Bollocks.
Okay. It's not that precise. But why do we really want to protect the freedom of speech of robots? I don't understand that. And the only remedy against that, the people cannot fight against that anymore. In Czechia, we had a very intense production of trolls from Russia. So Czechs created an army of elves, real people. Thousands of Czechs started to fight against that, entering the discussions and doing the fact-checking. It was a very precise and intense work of real people. And the other day I spoke to the speaker of the elves. Hey, Bob, you are not doing it anymore. And he said, are you crazy? It's impossible, because we are facing the army of AI creatures. It's not within the power of people anymore to win this. So if you spoil the information space by pure usage of technology, then it again has to be the technology to kill it. We are at that phase. So, and again, the EU legislation requires exactly this from the digital platforms. So, again, it's the rules should be enforced properly.
Requirements. It's one aspect, and enforcement is second.
But there should be no mercy, because the AI production has such a power that being used for war propaganda, it is something we cannot win without courageous decision. Let's be killing that. And I think that all that shout around the freedom of speech, and you mentioned that it's not absolute. In European states, we don't have absolute freedom of speech for serious reasons. We have some content which is prohibited by the law, but now we are in the information war with Russia. And when I proposed to put on the sanctions list Russia Today and Sputnik, after the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, you cannot imagine the attacks I had to face, because how come in Europe we are prohibiting media, it's censorship, blah, blah, blah. So I had to travel to Spain, to Germany, to Scandinavian countries, and keep explaining that this is not a usual or normal time, that we are facing war propaganda distributed by so-called media, which are not media in the European sense. Uneasy to explain that. And you know what helped me after all? And I will stop. Promise. In the middle of this battle, when I was desperate to explain why we need to sanction Russia today, I read the letter written by a Czech student, Jan Palach, who burned himself in 1969. Agnieszka Holland shot a fantastic film about him. He left a letter for the people to mobilize them and to wake them up and woke them up. There were 10 points. The first point was prohibit censorship. The second point, prohibit the Russian newsmakers. So I traveling across the European countries, showing Jan Palach's letter to explain that these two things are not in contradiction. Full stop.
I am really sorry that I'm going to have to interrupt this conversation because it was only getting started as well.
This is not a conversation anymore.
But before tomorrow, I really have to find the kill switch for the microphones in this room somewhere. So I think we'll take a 20-minute break for coffee, if you would like to get yourselves coffee, and then come back here for 6:05, if that's okay. Thank you very much to our speakers. That was fantastic.
our meeting, and I got the toughest job of my life because I have to introduce the person when I was really a very young scholar. I was going to Max Planck in the basement reading the things of Professor Annette Kur and of course of Professor Irena Wiśniewska. And today Professor Annette Kur from Max Planck Institute, she will just say a few words about the friendship and about Irena Wiśniewska. So, welcome.
So, thank you very much, Lavinia, and thank you so much for having me here, and I enjoy being here very much. And my God, that was really a fulminant first panel, I have to say. It was overwhelming. We have to we'll have to think about that. So from there, I want to take you back in time to times which were also not completely full of wine and roses, but were maybe a little bit less, at least for us in the West, were a little bit less well burdened by so many extremely difficult to solve issues and crises. I was invited to say a few words about, well, Irena as a person, and as I know her as a scholar. So I go back in time to, and I don't know exactly when that was. I think it was at the end of the 1970s, or it may have been the very first years of the 1980s. So I'm not so sure about the year, but I'm very, very sure about the impression that I received from Irena Wiśniewska when I first saw her. I have a vivid picture in my mind. At that time in the Max Planck Institute for Foreign and International Patent, Copyright and Competition Law, as it was then called, which was much smaller than the Institute for Innovation and Competition, under the name of which it still exists today in Munich. There was a habit that everybody who was working in the Institute or who was a guest of the Institute gathered together in a room in the basement called the coffee room. So it was not the cafeteria, but just the coffee room. And so everybody could know each other and get into discussions. So Irena entered that room, and I see her picture before my inner eye. She was beautiful, she was elegant, she was very sure of herself, she was determined, she was serious. She was an accomplished lady at that time. So I really got, from the beginning, a very deep impression of her. She came to the Max Planck Institute in those years because she was working on her, so she had already obtained her doctorate degree in 1976, and she was working on her habilitation on patent licensing and competition law. So it was the interface between competition law and intellectual property that was her subject at that time. And soon after that, or while she was writing her habilitation, she also entered a commission to prepare the new antitrust legislation in Poland, which came into existence in 1987, if I'm correctly informed, because of course it was during the socialist rules, but some economic freedom had been accorded to companies, and they started misusing it by restricting competition. So there was a need to pass a law, and she was in the commission elaborating that law. And well, there's a rumor, or maybe more than a rumor, that was often told with delight by the late Professor Friedrich Karl Bayer, who was the director of the institute at that time, that Irena single-handedly managed to introduce a clause into that competition law, which Bayer thought should be a model for the world to follow, namely that intellectual property is exempted from the application of competition law. The rumor, I mean, Irena herself, then in an article that she wrote, made it clear that it was not like that. But she, the only clause, or what this clause, Article 2, it was in the anti-competition or antitrust law of 87, said was that exempted from competition law are uses of intellectual property that are derived from the right per se. So this was more or less the dichotomy between existence and exercise of the right that we also know, of course, from the jurisprudence of the Court of Justice and also from other competition laws. Still, she also made clear that as a matter of principle, she was a stark defender of strong intellectual property rights. So she was a little bit critical about the manner in which the interaction or the interface between competition law and intellectual property law was handled by the Court of Justice in decisions like McGill and others. Talking about me, I came from a different side. I was dealing with consumer protection at the time when I entered the institute. And so even then when I then started more dealing with intellectual property proper, trademarks, designs, and so on, we kind of were natural opponents. I was the skeptical one and she was the defender of strong rights. But in spite of that, we got along very, very well, and we enjoyed our discussions because, I mean, Irena was, as everybody who knows her will probably remember, had very strong viewpoints. She had very strong convictions. She was very ambitious. She was always striving to attain a very high level of expertise. She was critical about herself, and she was also critical about the work of others. So she could be hard to discuss with. You really had to kind of know your field in order to be ready to discuss with her. But we thoroughly enjoyed it because it made discussions with her more rewarding and more challenging. So even when she then, after her habilitation, went into private practice, and also when she was at the court in Luxembourg, we kept up this habit of discussing. She would call me when she had something on her mind that she wanted to test against arguments. So she used me as a sparring partner, if you wish. And we had long phone conversations about issues that she wanted to discuss. So this was how we kind of framed our professional relationship. But apart from that, we were also quite close on a personal level. Sometimes Irena, if I may add that, acted a little bit like a slightly bossy big sister. So when we were abroad in conferences, she was the one who knew where to go, what to eat, what to undertake. But when I then teased her a little bit about that, she also was able to laugh about herself. So she was behind this air of severity that she had, and again, it was very serious. She really wanted to go to the depths of things. She really wanted to debate very, very strongly. But there was also a very warm character behind that, and a genuine curiosity. She wanted to know the viewpoints of other persons. So this was a very rewardful relationship. The last time I saw her was when I visited her in Luxembourg. She had invited me, and she was a very generous host, as always. Also when she, in previous times, invited me to Warsaw. as she did. And she gave me a lot of insights also on how the court was working. And these are things that I still can profit from till today. Thereafter, I have to say that that we lost a bit touch, so the contact was reduced to exchanging Christmas cards, and when those Christmas cards didn't arrive any longer, I didn't really, I mean, these are things that can happen. Sometimes you simply lost a track of persons, but that doesn't mean anything bad. So I was really shocked when I then learned that she had passed away in a rather early age. So all I can say is that she's very, very close to my heart still today. I miss her, and I'm very happy about the opportunity to be here today in her memory. So thank you very much.
Okay, so right now we'll be slowly moving to the part of the conference that everyone was waiting for. So we'll be announcing winners. My name is Maciej Bernat, and I had the pleasure jointly with Lavinia, Alison Jones, Annette, Tomasz Koncewicz, David Llewellyn, Grzegorz Materna, and Marek Safian to sit on the jury. And right now I would like to invite Professor Marek Safian to say a couple of words about Irena Wiśniewska, but also our prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Today's ceremony conference offers exceptional opportunity to share some of my personal reflections about Irena Wiśniewska. My friend and my colleagues from the court in Luxembourg, where we both served as judges. Irena as a judge of the General Court, and I as member of the Court of Justice. I would like to highlight 3 points. First, I would like to stress how important to her was the idea of establishing foundation intended to inspire, stimulate, and support young researchers working in the broad field of European law. In particular, in the areas of intellectual property, especially trademarks, competition law, and antitrust law. She spoke to me many times about this idea, and without exaggeration, I can say that it was for her a true dream. I would like to express my gratitude to all those who devoted their efforts to bringing this idea to life and to organizing the Irena Wiśniewska Prize. There's no doubt that today this dream has been realized, and I can easily imagine how much satisfaction this event would have given to Irena. Secondly, on such occasion it seems appropriate to recall the exceptional quality of Irena Wiśniewska's judicial work. Her remarkable and impressive achievement may themselves serve as a model of judicial excellence, not only in terms of the clarity of structure and the methodology of analysis, but also in the highest standard of legal reasoning. Her determination to find the most convincing solution and the proper justification for it was so strong that in the face of important legal dilemmas, all other matters, including the ordinary concern of everyday life, seemed to fade away. Even our Sunday walks and lunches were often dominated by legal debate. These discussions were not always easy for the participants. They require considerable concentration and careful preparation. Conversation about EU law and the case law of the Court of Justice could go indefinitely. It could even happen late into the evening when Irena decided to pursue the debate and share a new legal insight with the interlocutors, and the situation become a little bit troublesome. If Irena were with us this evening, one can be certain that she would have found many additional terms to enrich our meetings. And last but not least, my third observation concerned her remarkable honesty and her deep respect for the highest ethical standard, which she applied equally to others and to herself. Irena set very high expectations, absolute integrity, no manipulation, continuity and stability of legal convictions, of fundamental principles and values, and never tactical changes dictated by personal interest. Such an attitude and professional approach can serve as an example for the young researcher who are receiving the prestigious Irena Wiśniewska Prize today. I would like to offer all the laureates my sincere congratulations and my best wishes that they continue their excellent work and in the field of European law with great success and many further achievement in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we are really moving to announcing. So I would like to actually to invite the members of the jury to come forward. Those that are present, if you can. I would just say that was a collaborative work, and there were more than 40 works we had to review. Yes, and so okay. This is this is big. Okay, really big. Okay, so let's. So I would like to announce. So we have 3 winners, 3 outstanding scholars, and in alphabetic order. First, I would like to announce that the prize was won by Or Brook from University of Oxford for her work on non-competition interest in EU law, an empirical study of Article 101. Or please come forward. And secondly, we would like to give a prize to Claudia Meicher from European University Institute for her work entitled Coherence Between Data Protection and Competition Law in Digital Markets. Claudia. And last but not least, the prize goes to Joanna Wiśniowska from Nottingham University for her work entitled, this is a longer one, The Morality Exception in European Patent Law, a Universal Theory of Interpretation devised for the Unified Patent Court.
you going to stay here for this bit? What? Will you stay here for this bit? So it's my pleasure to announce a second prize, and this time it is. Oh. This time it is for the best master's thesis in competition and intellectual property law, and it is awarded by the law firm Waradinsky and Partners. So if I could invite Antoni to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Rory. A few words about our competition. So we received over 30 papers from students and lawyers from our law firms, Waradinsky and Partners, assessed those theses, both in competition law and intellectual property law. And the jury decided to award 2 prizes. One prize for the paper master thesis in competition law and one prize in IP law. So, and what's interesting, both papers concerned evidence issues in administrative and judicial proceedings. And in competition law, the winner of the prize is Mr. Kamil Weber. Kamil wrote a paper concerning disclosure of evidence in private enforcement cases, both in Polish and also in the European law. And Ania, if you could please announce the work for IP law.
Thank you, Antoni. I have the immense pleasure to announce that Julia Smogur submitted the winning master thesis in IP law. The subject of the paper is securing disclosure and surrender of evidence and protective measures in IP cases under Polish and German law, a comparative analysis. I congratulate you and on this, excellent beginning of your career as a lawyer, and I wish you continued success.
May I say something? When Irena came to the Max Planck Institute in the end of the 70s, or maybe beginning of the 80s, she was the only woman from Poland. I mean, there were others, obviously, in the academia at that time, but we had a number of Polish scholars, eminent professors coming to Munich, to the Max Planck Institute, but Irena was the only woman. And also, when I started, female scholars, and including aspiring scholars, were very, very rare. So it was very natural for us to group together. That was one factor that added to this attraction between her and inter alia me. So I'm anyhow, I know that we are in different times now, and I think in that point it's really a wonderful development because these times are gone when the males were so extremely dominant. But when I see here now the prize winners, I really had to say this. I'm really proud of all of these young women. And the young men getting this prize. So this I just wanted to add.
So we're coming to the end of our first day. So if I can ask Claudia and Joanna to join me on the sofas for a fireside chat, and if I could be joined by Dame Leo, who's going to be my co-host for this last part of today's session. So what we're going to be doing for the next 30 minutes, so the competition winners are at the very heart of our conference, this event. So congratulations, all of you, well done. And what the idea is that we get to know you a little bit better. So if you didn't catch this, just for the members of the audience, our winners are Orr Brooke, who's a professor at Oxford University, and she won the Irena Wiśniewska Prize for her book Non-Competition Interests in EU Antitrust Law, an empirical study of Article 101 TFEU. Claudia Meijer, our second winner, is a research fellow at the Robert Schuman Center at the EUI, and she won for her book Coherence Between Data Protection and Competition Law in Digital Markets. And our third winner, Joanna Wiśniewska, is a professor of IP law at the University of Nottingham, and she won for her book Morality in the Unitary Patent System, a Universal Method of Legal Interpretation. Like, nobody knows this, like you don't know this, but the competition was only supposed to have one winner. Like, that is what the rules say. But the discussion between the jury members lasted for quite literally months because they couldn't agree on who would win the prize among the three of you, because they thought that your works were so outstanding that there was merit for making a formal request to the foundation to divide the prize between you. So absolutely really well done for that. Like, I think that deserves another round of applause. So the format of this is really laid back. So if anybody wants to ask these outstanding individuals any questions, raise your hand and we'll make sure that you get a microphone. But just to start things off, I thought it might be a good idea to ask at the very first question, to go through each of you and get you to tell us, like, very briefly, what is the core idea of your winning work and what inspired you to come up with that idea? So you have microphones. Oh, yeah, or you can go first.
Okay. So thank you so much for the prize. My book examined the role of non-competition interests, so public policy considerations, a lot of the things we already discussed today. So it could be sustainability, employment, innovation, IP is one example, and how it's being taken into account in the enforcement of EU competition law. One of the unique approach of the book that while many works already approached these questions from doctrinal or constitutional law perspectives, the book took an empirical perspective to try to look how non-competition interests actually have been taken into account throughout history, so for the Commission from the 60s to nowadays, but also at 5 different member states. And one of the interesting findings for me was to see how we have much divergence in the member states. That actually this is one area of EU law that there's no real uniformity across the common markets. That was one finding, and the other finding was that we see less and less transparency. So while in the past, especially when we had the notification system, non-competition interest has been taken into account explicitly under Article 101(3) in particular. But as we move to the self-assessment regime and where competition authorities can choose which cases to take and which to disregard, this enforcement decision often take place in an invisible manner in the process of deciding which cases to enforce and how to enforce them. This also allows for more diversity, but also for less transparency and less public scrutiny. And especially as we see the increase of geopolitics, national protectionism, questions of democracy, there is a question, should we move back to more transparency and to have more explicit discussions of those difficult policy questions?
Thank you.
Should I go next? Yeah. So first of all, many thanks to the jury members for acknowledging my work and for going through so many, I'm sure, interesting other works. And congratulations to my fellow winners. So in my book, I focus on the intersection between 2 areas of law, competition law and data protection law. Why those areas? Well, we have currently market contexts where we have a handful of very dominant tech companies who have become dominant or who gain this power, immense power, to a large extent thanks to their access to and exploitation of personal information. So that's a concern for both competition and data protection. And in my book, I ask the question, how to strengthen coherence between these two areas of law, how to make them a kind of more synergetic fields in order to ultimately kind of better rein in or more effectively rein in the power of big tech companies and address their problematic practices. And why this subject? Of course, as we've been hearing today, I mean, on the one hand, those companies provide extraordinary services. On the other hand, they cause a lot of harm. And it's harm to individuals, to societies, so it's individual harm, collective harm, harm to democracies. And I think we should not, we cannot turn a blind eye to those issues. And I think it is really kind of Europe's moment to shape this technological path, and the path towards those, technologies are kind of the direction towards they're going. It's not the US moment, it's not China's moment, I think this is really Europe's moment. And back then when I was writing a PhD proposal, that was 2013, there were only a couple of cases discussing this kind of link. It was it was Equifax case in the EU, just briefly mentioning the interaction that basically it doesn't matter. That was in a way the conclusion. And in the US Google DoubleClick case, where we had a dissenting opinion. But there was also a lot of personal kind of experience with the technology. So I was a Facebook user, a heavy Facebook user, so were my friends, and we've been sharing a great deal of personal information there. And I think that there was at some point this realization that, those services are for free, but are they really for free? What is the business model here, and what can go wrong? And then in 2014, when I started my PhD, the European Data Protection Supervisor published this very influential opinion on big data and competitiveness that really, I think, got the discussion started in Europe. That's in a nutshell the project. Thank you.
Joanna.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Or and Claudia. So in terms of my project, which is in patent law we had this clause that bans granting patents on inventions whose commercialization would be immoral. This obviously raises some problems in the sense that patent law, its main purpose is to incentivize technological development in any field, including areas such as genetic engineering, biotechnology, which obviously raises a lot of moral, ethical concerns. So we have this kind of the clash, and we try to strike the right balance. For a very long time, from the perspective of European Union law, the issues of morality, basically it was an avoidance of regulating this somehow top-down, because morality is such a fluctuating concept, time and place specific, couldn't be really grasped in one term. But with patent law, at some point we could no longer afford this luxury. In 2023, the Unified Patent Court was established after long decades of negotiations. And the time has come when one court had to, somehow, judges now have to face the task at some point to strike this balance for all the states that participate in this cooperation. So basically, this was the motivation behind this project and behind this book, to lay down some sort of the recipe, systematize the process of looking into morality, trying to avoid the impossible task of saying what morality actually is, and refraining from proposing any long-term reform, but actually treat morality as not a villain of patent law, but as an opportunity for dialogue and analytical, methodized discussion. So what I propose in this book is hopefully a helpful tool that academics, maybe even practitioners, may want to look into while trying to strike this balance between fundamental values and the rights of patent holders.
I didn't realize that my co-presenter had sabotaged me by switching the microphone off before he handed it to me. Let's take that again from the top. I'd like to begin by congratulating all three of you, and you were obviously presented in alphabetical order, but you are 3 prize winners. And it's the first time I've heard of that the jury eventually goes back to the foundation and says, excuse me, we're not going to choose one person because we have 3 outstanding candidates and we think they should all be honored. So really very, very warm congratulations to the 3 of you. And also thank each of you for providing, I think, a beautifully clear, exceptionally well-structured description of, you know, the end product of your research. Because of course the publication is the end product, and it's a wonderful moment, you know, you see it and there it is in the book form. You think, ah, fantastic. But behind the publication, there is a much longer research journey. And I just wondered if you would like to share a bit, maybe, about the process behind the project. And in particular, you know, if you had individual challenges that you encountered during the research, during writing up, perhaps if you'd like to open up and tell people that these moments do arrive on the route to that glorious final moment of publication.
So my book is also based on PhD, my PhD, and also actually started at the same time, which I didn't realize in 2013 already. It was published in 2022, just to show the amount of time. I think one of the main challenges was that the book is based on empirical legal studies, so systematic content analysis of legal text. Legal empirical approach is less common in Europe, I think both in terms of less experience, but also there is quite some pushback. And I think I realized the amount of pushback even more now, so they have more publication and that they get some attention, that some authorities, some jurisdiction just do not accept this type of research, as seen it, for example, as a personal attack against the judiciary or against a certain system. So I think definitely selling the research, why it's not a personal attack, but also why it's relevant, why it's legal. Some people thought that it was too policy or not legal enough. And I think that's probably one of the big challenges. The second one is just practical. So as a PhD student, my first year and a half of the research was just collecting the data. The research is based on 3,101 cases, which mean that after 1.5 years of research, I had nothing written down except just Excels. And I think the trust of your supervisors that's okay, and the data collection is important in itself, was very important to overcome this first part.
So thanks for the question. So I did my PhD in Brussels, and I think I wanted to mention that because I think it kind of shaped the way I thought and the way I wrote. So, and I think, you know, being where the policymakers are based, and also kind of benefiting from their generous time, because I've had multiple conversations with policymakers, practitioners in Brussels. I think that made the argument kind of also a little bit more nuanced and nicely complemented the theoretical part. When it comes to challenges, well, I wrote about 2 areas of law, so data protection law, competition law. Both of them have certain peculiarities, different legal histories, different rules. Obviously, you know, gaining the in-depth knowledge into the 2 legal kind of domains was a challenge in the first year, let's say. And then, you know, there's economics, there's law, there's also legal theory. So I think that this interdisciplinarity, in a way, is what I found interesting, but also kind of a little bit of a challenging aspect. And that kind of was reflected in my PhD committee, where I had an economist, a practitioner, a legal theorist, someone who's now the judge in the European Court of Justice. And I think we've had a lot of discussions and disagreements. Sometimes there were also disagreements between the committee members that made the work in a way interesting, but also sometimes challenging. And yeah, so that's what I want to share.
For me, I think that one of the biggest challenge was that it was half a year in my project where pandemic started. And what it meant, obviously, pandemic resulted in various difficulties for all of us. But for me, for this project, the biggest problem was lack of academic discourse. There was no opportunity to share this research with the broader community. Go to the conference or even to the PhD student office and just talk, not only about the project, but also about the process. I had it for the first 6 months and then it was all gone. So PhD in law is a very lonely process in itself, but then it proved incredibly lonely. And in that sense, I'm very, very grateful to my supervisors who always were ready for still trying to engage me in this kind of academic discourse, keep me curious about this project, and were so attentive that when I was halfway through my project, after 1.5 years, more or less, they started talking to me at some point, and after the long discussion, they said, you know what, you seem incredibly curious about this particular point. How about you redirect your project completely and focus on this? And I was like, really, now? Isn't it too late? And they were like, no, just try it. And they were right. So in that sense, it was, of course, a challenge to redirect the project, to some extent start anew in this very individual situation. But it was also a blessing at the end, I think, for this project. So it was an interesting journey from this perspective. Two biggest difficulties, but it ended up all right.
Wow. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? So while we're waiting, there's one question that I would like to ask, and I'm aware that tomorrow you're all speaking and we will be talking about legal concepts relevant to your studies in IP law and competition law. So I'd like to ask a personal question, and it's just picking up on something that Claudia said, and then you also kind of hinted at it, Joanna, about the importance of doing your PhD in Brussels. And I'd like to ask how you think you've been influenced by going abroad from your home country to study. Like, speaking as an Irish person who lives in Poland, all of you specialize in legal subjects that are not confined to the borders of the country where you studied. And I think that's kind of important. So how have you been influenced? Like, I don't know about but definitely both of you are, you studied and you live other than in the country where you grew up in. Like, has that had an impact? Do you recommend that to young academics? Were there difficulties? Like, I know that's a complex question, so it wouldn't be very good in examining, but what do you think?
Well, I don't have really a comparison when it comes to what it means to work in the national kind of in Poland. In fact, I'm from Poland, so in Poland, I've benefited definitely from Brussels, from that context, but also I've been always working in very international environments. So we were all in the same boat in a way, and I think that created a very supportive environment, right? Yeah, other than that, I mean, I have to say I've been quite lucky. I've felt always very included, and I've benefited from also quite generous funding, which is not obvious, and it should not be taken for granted, because other countries may not, have access to that type of funding. And this is, 4 years of our adult lives that we're spending doing a certain project. So I think this is also important. But other than that, I have to say, I've enjoyed it, and that's why, I'm still abroad, and I would love to, perhaps at some point get a taste of a Polish academia, but for now, home is somewhere else.
I would say yes, definitely it influenced me, but I definitely recommend the experience. So I did my first law degree in Poland at the Jagiellonian University, and then I went to the UK to do my LLM and then PhD. It definitely opened my mind. The first couple of weeks during my LLM in Oxford was a challenge. I wouldn't say that it was an easy journey, but it definitely shaped me as an academic. And I think it was this kind of the moment when I thought I want to stay in academia. Because before it was always this kind of the journey. I want to see what's out there and possibly come back to practice. But I think this intellectual community that I was surrounded by definitely made me more open academically. And now I understand what my first mentor, I would say, late Professor Elżbieta Trapla, said when she told me, if you want to do research, go abroad, try, see what's out there, and use this opportunity. She was absolutely right. But it's always nice to be home, you know, and join those two worlds and see how the academia is also developing here in Poland.
I suppose a question that follows on fairly naturally from what you both have been saying, and linking back to what was said earlier about, you know, you can be very, very solo, very isolated as a research student. And also, you know, what do you do when you've reviewed over 3,000 decisions? I know I'd want to lie down and shut in a dark room for a while. Have you, during the course of doing your work and producing it to a level which has been so successful, have you any, you know, any particular habits, any particular practices that you found helpful in terms of ensuring that you stayed productive?
For me, I think especially when you conduct an empirical research, and I also had the pleasure to, also some people in the room, to have other similar big projects, is just to be very organized and to have daily quarters. So I had 11 cases per day, and after that I just stopped, no matter what was the time of the day. And that I found was rewarding and was a good practice. So I think just to be very organized.
Maybe it will be an unorthodox kind of answer, but I've learned how to set clear boundaries between what's work and what's free time. And I didn't use, during my PhD, it was complete chaos, but I think it's really important to me to know evenings, weekends are for family, friends, hobbies, sports, and I think keeping the head clear really helps me then to kind of be productive, be creative. And in fact, I came up with my theoretical framework for my PhD while sitting on a train and going for a reunion weekend with friends. So, and I think, yeah, that's something quite for me important to, in a way, be clear about and protect. And obviously that's not always possible, but to the extent possible.
I think I can say only briefly, I was always trying to keep myself curious about something in my research. If I got bored in one area, I tried to remember why I do this and try to, you know, get another book, get someone to talk about another idea to get myself interested again. Sometimes it was obviously difficult because in every project there are some mundane parts of analysis that you just have to go through. But definitely knowing that it's another curious, interesting thing coming, I think that was always something that kept me going, especially in this isolated experience.
Thank you. Marta Schneider from the University of Warsaw. Thank you first of all, congratulations to all of you. And I know Or's book and Claudia's research, and I'm also looking forward after this panel to reading Joanna's book. But I find it also really inspiring hearing from you talk about your PhD projects that turned into such a great success. As I'm currently trying to wrap up my PhD project, so given this the nature of this chat and what you already shared, I was wondering if you have also any inspiration or anything, any mottos that kept you through at those like final stages to really get it done, also to such a wonderful level. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite part either to finalize. I'm with you. I think just trying to kind of keep an eye on the prize at this stage and think what you want to do next. Yeah, but no, it's not my favorite part either. I can just relate.
Yeah, I can just only echo. Perhaps just, you know, it's never done, right? Like you will never be 100% perhaps happy, or I hope that you will be 100% happy, but you know what I mean. You can always think more and write more. So at some point it just has to be wrapped up. And yeah, but good luck.
I can give some practical advice that, I mean, for me it definitely worked that I had a starting date for the job and the move back to the UK coming, which I was like, I really have to get this thing done. And it really kept me going. So maybe sometimes having something as a next step, already planning. It can be employment, it can be some kind of the publication goal, something that is there, that you have even this kind of internal deadline for yourself, which keeps you go through this very hard last stage, because I think we all agree it was an extremely hard time, this writing up process. So good luck, definitely.
Or a holiday planned, you know? That's
that's also a good idea.
I think it's really great that you are encouraging somebody who is just at those points of trying to wrap, when you try and get everything that's been happening over the last 3+ years and pull it together and polish it and make it beautiful. So thank you for that encouragement. I mean, all three of you have moved, in a sense, today's prize celebration is a celebration of wonderful things, which for all of you, though, are now things that are, dare I say, in the past, because they're your PhDs that turned into books, and that's absolutely great and wonderful for you. But all of you are now pursuing careers that take you on forward. And I wondered if you wanted to tell us briefly about what you're now working on and why you're so interested in it and where it's going, and you know why it lights your fire.
So for me, definitely I would, to some extent, would like to stay in this area of biotechnology, patents, pharmaceutical patents. This is mostly because this is always the topic that interested me, and there's still so much to discover there. I've been surrounded by scientists in my life, including my husband, who is a medicinal chemist. So it always leads to very interesting discussions. But I also started to move, because I am particularly interested in exploring this kind of the balance between IP rights and fundamental rights, some other interests. Recently, I've been looking more and more into issues at the intersection of IP and sustainability issues, environmental protection, the topic that definitely requires more and more attention in our current world. And I'm looking forward to some new project in this field.
So I'm a little bit distracted because my baby just woke up and he's there, and I hope he will not start screaming. Yeah, that is still my plan. I'm still on maternity leave, but in a month when I'm back, I'll be continuing my research into the kind of different shades of power of online platforms. That seems to be the topic that kind of keeps on giving. But also another kind of line of research. So our community, antitrust community, is extremely divided. There's a lot of conflicts about, you know, a lot of things, the meanings of different types of concepts, the level of enforcement, the so many aspects of competition law are kind of divisive in a way topics. So I'd like to research a little bit more about, you know, perhaps certain mechanisms of consensus making and the area of justification. I'm not yet sure where I'll go with this research, but probably that direction. And I'm also excited. The UI, I'm responsible for coordinating research related to digital markets, so kind of fostering interdisciplinarity at the institution. And there's so many wonderful projects related to different areas of digital law, regulation, policy, and I'm looking forward to going back and working with colleagues on how we can learn from one another.
I'm working on a new book, which kind of, after having our discussion, kind of make me think why. So a new monograph about decentralization of EU competition law enforcement. So I think the book, but also the projects and articles after the book, one common theme was about decentralization, and it looked from different perspectives. So decentralization of judicial review, decentralization of priority setting, of public policy, of block exemption regulations. So in this monograph, I hope to bring everything together and have kind of a coherent theory of what is actually decentralization, how decentralization became substantive. So we have actual power for the member state to interpret EU competition law, often in a ways that not necessarily align with the Commission, and to see how that resulted in practice and what did that mean also in terms of how we should assess and control decentralization.
Thank you. Tomasz Koncewicz, University of Gdańsk, and member of jury. I have the following point to make. One of the most fascinating feature of the law of integration is this dichotomy between the text, that is always imperfect, that is lacking, and the context. So we might say that for a politician, the text is the end game. He adopts the text and the journey is over. But for those who interpret the imperfect text, judges, other actors, NGOs, the text is only the beginning of the journey. So my question, and something that I've been grappling with reviewing the books, was how to draw the line between the text and the context, and what was the dichotomy how was it working out for you working on your own projects? How much text, how much context, and where to draw the line between the two? The imperfect text that starts the journey and the context that must be filled out with the content, with those actions by those who interpret the text that have been always imperfect.
Is it for me? Oh, for all of us? I can start since I already started. I think for me, in a way, it was easier because I took a legal realist perspective. So for me, the law in the books is really a very start point of departure, of limiting what the law could mean. And especially if you look at Article 101, Article 102, they do not tell us too much when it comes to the role of public policy. It's very vague. The provisions are based on law going back to the Middle Ages. So really not the context, either legal, economic, or socially that we are in today. But because I took a legal realist approach, looking empirically, I think it was easier. So I didn't focus on what the law should be, but what it is in terms of how it's being applied to the day-to-day practice. Again, it's a very common approach in the US especially, in Europe less so, but at least that part I think was relatively straightforward.
So yeah, there's obviously this distinction, right, between legal realism and formalism, and what the rule says and what the context kind of requires us to maybe, or doesn't require us, but allows us to do with the rule. And I think in my area at least, so I'm a law and technology scholar, which makes it a little bit complicated in the sense that technology, this context is evolving quite fast, right? And I think I've found it challenging to kind of the book is based on my PhD, but only kind of 30% of my book is my PhD. So I revised it heavily and kind of adapted it to the current kind of technological societal context. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, in fact, and something that gives us scholars a job to think about the interpretation and what we can do with the existing rules, but also something divisive, right? Like this is what we have legal arguments about, and that's why, for example, the antitrust community is so divided, right? Because we argue about, to what extent should the context impact the legal rule, or how it should impact it. But this is what makes it also quite fascinating.
What I can say in case of my book, the problem was that it was not maybe that the law was imperfect, it was just so vague. Because when we talk about ordre public or morality, it does on purpose like this. And precisely on purpose, meaning that we have to go into context and purpose. And this is the starting point of the theory that I'm laying down in this book. First, let us look into context, because it's absolutely necessary. But also, precisely because this kind of general terms, blanket clauses, cannot be defined, what I was trying to do is therefore to provide a tool and a mechanism to deal with the problem which authorities are faced with, rather than laying down saying that I want to improve something that is very in the way that I want to do this. But obviously, this is at the end in the hands of the practitioners. How skillful are judges and practitioners in utilizing any tool that either they invent themselves or academics may help them develop. So it is only for us to see what the practice will bring with all of this, I think in all our disciplines.
Can it wait? It is 12 minutes past 7. Now the questions are coming. But our speakers, our winners, are speaking on all of the panels tomorrow. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to ask them questions and talk. So I might take the decision and advise that we finish for today. Invite everybody into the foyer for a glass of wine. And there you can continue the conversations. And I just want to say once again, congratulations and good luck carrying those massive checks on your planes home. Good luck to the people sitting next to you. Tomorrow, the keynote speech by President van der Woude will take place and start, if I can do anything about it, at 9 o'clock sharp with no delay. So please can everybody be here on time to start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So other than that, thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers today, Vera Jourova. That was honest and fantastic and a wonderful keynote speech. From an organizational perspective, it's really useful to know that it's a good idea to invite speakers who were powerful and influential and are now able to speak their minds freely. It really makes for an interesting discussion. And thank you to the discussants, Dame Leo, Eleanor Sharpston, and Michał Boni. That was fantastic. And thank you very much. And yeah, let's go have a glass of wine.